And welcome back to another episode of Civil Discord, your weekly dose of radical curiosity. This episode is a very special episode because we're probably going to be releasing this. This is like midweek type episode recording for us or whatnot. So this is great. It's special for a number of reasons. One, if you are watching the video, you will see exactly why it's so special, because there's an additional face, beautiful, handsome young face that is with us. But we'll dive into that here pretty soon. But before we do, as always, I am one of your hosts, the notorious BLG, aka Maurice Jones, out here in the People's Republic of Texas, that is doing such a great thing. It's hot, it is miserable, but nonetheless, we are still living out here in Texas. It is great. Gas is not as high as it is rest of everywhere else in America, which I don't know is a good thing or not. But this episode is not going to discuss any of that. Hopefully, maybe it will, maybe it won't, depending on how things go. But with me, as always, is the supreme overlord of liberty, Amanda Ajax the Griff, out there in the People's Republic of California. Amanda, how's it going?
It's going fine. My face is very prominent right now. I just have to say, on the screen, I've got Magoo's kind of got a purple tone, you kind of got a purple tone, and then I'm just front and center, and I'm super bright. It's going all right. I scheduled a very, very untimely session for my Darkness at Noon reading week. So every year I have a tradition of reading Darkness at Noon, which is fantastic. Everyone should read it once per year, and then give yourself some time to recover. So this is a difficult week for me to be reading Darkness at Noon with hearings, and we're discussing party dynamics right now. Right. So it's going to be weird. But anyway, I'm okay other than that. Yeah.
Gotta love it. And Amanda already alluded to it, but we have a very special guest on. If you guys have been following us from the very beginning, this is a repeat offender on the Civil Discord podcast. He was our very first guest on here, and he is our very first repeat guest on here. Out there in Georgia, I believe he's still out there in Georgia, home of the Bulldogs, who are the current reigning national champions, and the Braves, who are currently the World Series champions as well too, until that they get dethroned this year as well too. Is Mr. Jim Magoo? How are you doing, sir?
What's going on, guys? Maurice, that was the best intro I've ever gotten. I think I'm going to clip that out and save it for all of my future appearances on everything. No, I'm doing good. Thank you guys for having me back. I look forward to our discussion. Should be fun. Even when we're not recording, they tend to be pretty fun and lively. Always. So I just have a quick question, though. Is that Darkness at Noon? Is that like the post-reading clarity after sex at dawn? Or are they not connected? I'm not a big reader. You'll learn that as the episode goes on. I don't know a lot.
You should read Darkness at Noon. You know, there's not much sex at dawn in this book. So I'm inclined to say it is. So to give a little bit of background, it's kind of sort of pre-Iron Curtain inspired dystopian, but it's very, very closely based on real events. And basically, forced confessions and show trials during the upheavals in an unnamed country, but it's clear that it's Russia, the motherland, the communist Russia. And part of the reason that it's so uncomfortable is because if you're a libertarian, you know this, there is a little closet communist revolutionary that lives inside every libertarian. Mm-hmm. And so there is one particular character in this book who is basically me as a communist revolutionary. And so I have to confront myself with this character so as not to become this character. And I have to do that once a year. But it's a great book, and I highly recommend it. Darkness at Noon, Arthur Kessler. Check it out.
Face your darkness, Amanda. We all have a little bit in us.
Exactly. More. Yeah.
Another book to add to the great Civil Discord podcast reading list, for sure. But if you listened to us last time, we had Jim on here, we discussed a little bit about how things should move forward as far as libertarians and ideologies and how to really make an impact within our said culture, community, political, however we whichever direction we decided to go. But we have him back on because I feel like a lot of our listeners are probably libertarian of some sort. And they may or may not know that that the Mises Caucus, I called them the Mecox, the Mises Caucus has actually taken over the Libertarian Party. And we just kind of wanted to discuss that. Jim is definitely in a lot more in the trenches in this than we are, and so we wanted to bring him on here just to kind of get a history of what's transpired, how things went down, and how things may or may not proceed in the future. So Jim, if you just want to start us off, just what exactly happened, and then we can just kind of go from there.
Sure. So whatever I said the first time I was on, it's a decent likelihood that I probably have changed my stance. I don't even remember what it was.
Good.
But...
No, because the episode was called Bolshevik Libertarians. There's a theme to the titles. But yeah, no, you were talking about what the best way is to institute political change.
Yes.
So it's such a weird week for me to be reading dark. Just go on. Just go on.
If my take on the first episode I was on was they need to relate more to normies, then I still agree with that. But what I will say is I'm repping some old Mises Caucus gear. I don't even think they make this anymore. I don't know. I'm not as involved as I was, but I still am far more involved than I think most people. I'm still in all the LPMC Discord, Facebook, all the different Mises adjacent podcast groups. I'm still in all that. Still got a lot of friends in there. A lot of good people on all sides. But I'll say this, like I'm still a monthly donor to Mises, mainly because if I sign up for something, I typically forget to ever end it.
Right.
But I'm not a member of the LP, and I don't ever intend on being a member of the LP, not because I don't like what is going on, but I just don't foresee myself ever registering with any party ever, regardless of what's going on. I don't see the benefit there. If I want to help a candidate or whatever, I'll just write them a check. But anyway, so what had happened was about 5 years ago, a guy by the name of Michael Heiss was looking around at the Libertarian Party and the way that it was currently being run and had been run for over a decade before then, was that he felt that what brought him into libertarian movement, which would be Ron Paul, was completely non-existent in the party. That the party was being run by more regime, what's the word? I guess friendly kind of people. And
when you say more regime, sorry.
So, like, for example, this over, this past election cycle, 2020, the main messaging that was coming out of the party from the presidential candidate as well as establishment LNC types was, take the vaccine. Vaccines are good. This is a good thing. Wear your mask. You don't want to get people sick. Stay at home. Get double vaxxed. They were echoing everything that you would hear from the corporate media and any mainstream outlet. And so it was like, well, first of all, these don't really align with libertarian values of self-autonomy, self-ownership, personal responsibility, private property rights, the key foundations of libertarian thought and philosophy. They were absent from their messaging. And this was noticeable years before 2020. Right. And so Michael Heiss said, you know what, I'm going to try to, I know they're out there because there was a lot of people in 08 and 12 when Ron Paul ran for president. And he said, it's time to go find those people. They're probably politically homeless, not like in the Republican Party, not like obviously probably would never be a Democrat. Let's go find those people and let's reignite this thing and let's blow it up. And blow it up as in, let's amass the biggest number of libertarian-minded libertarians and let's take the Libertarian Party back from leftist-leaning, regime-echoing libertarians.
In quotes, okay.
And so he started the caucus, and just through grassroots efforts of knocking doors, making calls, doing fundraising, blowing up social media, and getting his friends to spread the message, he got the attention of some prominent libertarian mouthpieces. And that's not meant as a derogatory term by any means, but of like Tom Woods and Dave Smith,
Right.
and Michael Malice, Eric July, those kind of guys. And then they bazookaed his message to the masses, and it immediately took off with a very large number of people, which eventually 5 years later culminated in what happened May 26th, 28th, 29th, something like that, out in Reno, Nevada, at this year's annual, or I don't know if it's annual, Libertarian National Convention, where they send all of their party delegates to elect the new committee members, the new office staff that's going to be actually running the party, pushing the messaging, and carrying out the ideals of the current party. And when that took place, there was this whole push, and they were labeling it the Reno Reset, or the takeover, the Great Mises Caucus takeover. It was advertised as that for about 2 years.
Yeah.
And the Mises Caucus delegation showed up at about anywhere between 65 and 75% of the total number of people.
Oh, wow.
And so, because they still believe in democracy, everything is voted on, and they swept it. Every position they were running for, I think with the exception of one backup position, they got their person in. New chair, new vice chair, new treasurer, new at-larges, every key position within the party. If it wasn't a Mises Caucus member, it was a Mises Caucus ally or adjacent, or somebody that was friendly with the Mises Caucus.
Okay.
So that now the party, everything that they now do moving forward will kind of have a pre-approval of the Mises Caucus.
Right.
Which I'm sure a lot of people are going, well, yeah, it's libertarian saying libertarian things. How would that not be the case? But if anybody has been paying attention, obviously there was a big shift that a lot of people felt needed to happen. And that's that quickly and kind of very not detail oriented brings us up to speed from inception to right now. Right.
And so, and I know back in my podcast listening heydays, excuse me, when I was commuting an hour to work and an hour back or whatnot, I remember I used to listen to Part of the Problem. Dave Smith was always talking about, hey, libertarians, the Mises Caucus, he termed it the Libertarian Party takeover. Like, we are going to take over the party. And of course he got a lot of pushback from people who are allies of him, and people who were like, not really sure you should use that, because when you think takeover, you think something hostile and so forth. And so but it was all indicative of him running for president in 2024 as far as being the Libertarian Party nominee and so forth. And so I remember every single episode I was listening to it, he would talk about it in some sort, make sure that you get specific people to be the chair. Like, all of these things have to take place in order for us to go this. And of course, I mean, he was getting criticized by, some well-known libertarians or whatnot, saying like, hey, it's just stupid. Why are you going about, why would the Mises Caucus go about doing things like this and so forth? And then, and to be fair, there was fair criticism, and then he had some fair points. It's like, hey, if we're going to say that, hey, that something that has our name on it is espousing these beliefs, then let's make sure it's espousing the right beliefs and so forth. And so there was a lot of that going on and whatnot. So that being said, Amanda, do you have any questions so far?
Yeah, I'm curious. First of all, I think you and I, Magoo, were both talking. Well, we were all three talking before the show, and I had mentioned that I'm a contrarian, and I also like to be pressed, and I like to press others. And so, whatever caucus and type of leadership is most dominant in any party, but let's just talk about the Libertarian Party, I am going to critique it more. So when you had the previous leadership, I was more critical of their messaging. With the Mises Caucus now very, very prominent in the Libertarian Party, I'm more inclined to critique them more openly. And you were talking about, I think that there's a bit of a falling out between a former Mises Caucus member, right, and the current leadership.
Yeah, so there's a lot of this libertarian stuff exists on the internet, namely on Twitter.
Yeah.
And so, which we all know, and I'm sure I'm not stepping out of line by saying that Twitter's a cesspool, and it's not real life, but it seems to every now and then, kind of like Stranger Things, the upside down ends up bleeding into the real world. And it actually starts affecting what people do. And so the build up to this great reset, there's some prominent, and I don't even know if they were Mises members, maybe at one time, but they were definitely Mises adjacent, Mises friendly, and were in that camp if they were going to have a camp to choose. Like the Pete Quinones's, who I love listening to and respect, and I there's a lot of Mises people that don't like the people I'm about to say, but I still like them all a great deal. But like Pete Quinones and Mark Claire, Tho Bishop, guys like that have been openly critical, as well as Andrew at Popular Liberty, Matt Erickson with King Pilled. Again, I like all these guys. So this isn't even like this is more of a beef stays on Twitter. It's not real life as far as the way I see it. But they have been critical of the idea that you can actually achieve liberty via a political party. That politics is not the pathway towards liberty. It is a pathway towards a lot of effort and time and money that will go to no benefit of that individual. That if you want liberty in your lifetime, you have to go create it. You have to go either find it, fight for it, or create it, and then maintain it. And you're not going to get that through a political party. A political party is not going to be the device that saves you. And that, for whatever reason, seems to be highly problematic, if I can use a leftist term, highly problematic to a lot of the MECOC faithful, which to me bewilders me. I'll never understand. And I think what it really comes down to, if I can kind of cut to the point of this whole thing, is that it comes down to because it's happening on Twitter, and that nobody has bedside manner on Twitter. Everyone is basically, everyone reads every tweet that doesn't agree with them as though it's written in all caps. Everybody thinks that everybody's yelling at each other. There's no sense of humor. There's no sarcasm font. So it just only makes people upset. No matter what you say. If you just say, no, I just think it's a waste of time, they read it as, no, you freaking moron, it's a waste of time. Like,
exactly,
just loser. And so it's to me, the people that are pursuing their own personal liberty probably shouldn't even be on Twitter. It's a waste of your time to be on Twitter to tell these people that it's a waste of their time. But I understand the message because I'm not reading it like you're scorning me. I go, yeah, no, that's a good point. If you can't afford the $5 a month to donate to the Mises Caucus, or the $1,500 for the long weekend or whatever to fly out to Reno to play politics, then yeah, you should probably not be involved. You're not in a position to help anybody achieve anything, much less your own self. So to me, there's good people on both sides. They're both making good points. It's not like one is telling the other person, well, maybe they are telling each other to go F themselves. But to me, it's just like, no, that's a valid argument. That's also from somebody that's been in this longer than you, that has made this a career and are opting out of pursuing it. That's hurting their bank account. They're not going to be financially better off by removing themselves from the pursuit that you're engaged in. They could actually make a lot more money off of you, but because they're saying, look, I also want liberty, same as you, I'm not going to lead you down this path that I think is a large time suck and a large money pit.
Right.
And so to me, it's like, you can also look at it that way. But
Yeah.
a lot of people don't seem to look at it as like, hey, these people have led me along for 7 years to this point, and now they see a problem in that, a fallacy in that philosophy.
Mhm.
So
And I because and I remember when a lot of this criticism was happening, um, and they were criticizing a lot of the Mises Caucus, and because I mean I used to Jason Stapleton, a Wealth, Power, and Influence, they would, I mean, and a lot of times they would uh they would very much say, hey, these are friends of mine, so I cannot, so I don't have to pull punches.
mhm.
And they would outwardly express like, hey, this is a stupid idea, you know. They would kind of mock it and things of that nature. And so and of course, you know, some of the people who they were going after, they didn't take it to anything. Like, it was like okay, like, cool, like they have their say, I have my say, and we'll move on or whatnot. But I know that it was, who was it, Vin Armani, and was it Dave Smith that got into it, like got into it via Twitter. I mean,
Yep.
and it set libertarian Twitter on fire. Like, oh my gosh, you know. And
A lot of people
and,
type it in all caps that way.
and yes, that and that was definitely one of the ones where it's like you have going back to Twitter being the cesspool. I feel like there are a lot of people who like to punch up, and so there's they will say a few things, shots here and there, because they know that what they're going to say is going to rile some feathers, and somebody's going to get a reaction, and it's going to increase their following, increase their brand. And to be and in all honesty, Matt Erickson says that he does this. He like he talks about, hey, in order to increase my brand, in order to decrease who I am, I need to go after people who are well known. And so I think that's a lot of it too. It's, hey, I'm trying to increase my brand and trying to increase the autonomy that I like to preach. And hey, you know, I mean, because he is one of those guys who preaches that, hey, I am going to do this, and that way I can make sure that I am even more independent of all things, whether that's Twitter or I am helping people to reach a point in life where they can afford the $1,500 or so forth kind of thing, as opposed to trusting somebody else to take to do all the work for them kind of thing.
Yeah. And I will say this real quick about Matt Erickson. He no longer really engages like that. That was at the beginning to,
Yeah, for sure.
you know, build. Since then, through the whole COVID thing, and this isn't like doxing or putting his personal stuff out on Front Street, but he's moved out of California. I think he lives in Texas now. He's joined a local church. He's very active in that, and he's focused a lot more on his family and actually just his actual personal foundations. So he's far less active in that avenue. So I do want to at least give him
for sure,
give him that update. But I will say Andrew from Popular Liberty very much does that. I've had one-on-one discussions with him. Like, I'm just curious, man. Like, out of all of the entirety of the internet, why are you chipping off and sniping at a small group within a small, fringe political? Why are you having your customer base be this small when you can make it, even this bigger, or this much bigger, by just going after the actually people that you already align with? Like, why are you pointing your guns backwards, shooting at the people that aren't coming with you anyway? And he's like, and then he's explained himself, and I won't be able to explain it as well as he has, but he did make it known that was his intent, was to pick, because he doesn't need that many people, is what he says. I just need a few. I just need a few. So if I can just chip away at a few of the people that I know their language, then I can have them come on board with me, and that's all I need. And so I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know. That's grifting.
Yeah.
To me, it's like there's a lot of arguments that could be made in that direction. It's like, well, they're not coming, and you're only going to piss people off, and you're kind of fucking up everybody's timeline. So could you maybe pick a different clientele set?
Exactly.
Please?
Well, so we're dancing around the social media dimension of all this, right? So it seemed to me that throughout that the problem with both iterations of the Libertarian Party, pre-Mises and now, is that both of them were very, very aware of social media audiences. And Mises is even just saying, we're courting podcast audiences. Okay. Now, the earlier LP, Libertarian Party, was courting, I think, more of the leftward leaning people that they wanted to draw in.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have the Mises Caucus, which is courting extremely online rightward libertarians. I'm not sure whether either of those approaches is necessarily good for winning actual public sentiment outside of Twitter. And I think this is a problem that the Libertarian Party's had in general, is that, okay, you're going to confine yourself to social media, fine. You're going to confine yourself to a lot of people who don't typically vote anyhow. Well, okay, that's strategic, right? Because there's no party tie. But there's not a sense of building organic sentiment within the overall political landscape. That's what seems lacking to me.
Yes. Even with the sweeping overtaking of the Libertarian Party by the Mises Caucus, they still are but a fraction, and the smallest fraction of the American voting population, much less the political population. They're insignificant. They're actually meaningless. They don't threaten anything. Their rhetoric sounds threatening, but the actual power that they can wield is statistically insignificant.
Mm-hmm.
Basically a statistical zero. And that's why I'm open to the remarks and ideas of the Petes and Mark Claires and all them that are like, if you actually want to achieve something politically, you need to be a part of a party that will win just for the fact that you have a letter next to your name.
Yeah.
And stop thinking that people actually vote based on principles. They don't.
Yes.
I don't know how many elections we need to see where until we're proven that is the case. Like, nobody votes on principles.
Right.
Some people vote on principles. So I didn't specify a quantity. I just said some people vote on principles.
Yeah.
Greater than zero.
And those people that vote on principles are never going to change those principles because of a fringe third party loud on social media, message.
Right.
And so in a way, I'm kind of doing that whole like, hey, I'm happy the Mises Caucus took over the Libertarian Party. I still just don't know what that's going to end up meaning. I think for our little fan club, our little Liberty fan club, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be so much fun. The messaging is going to be just off the chain. They're going to say in the Fed a lot. They're going to do a lot of things that the old one wasn't doing. But when it comes down to who's in positions of power, even locally, and this is kind of me saying this as a challenge, I want to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want to be right. Saying that the Libertarian Party is insignificant politically and is incapable of wielding power is the laziest thing that can be said about the Libertarian Party. Everybody knows it's true.
Right.
I finally want to be proven wrong. I would love for them to be a significant force to get 25 to 30% of the national attention, to where the other two parties then had to start, adjusting their plan so that they would still retain power. They now have to answer to us. Not saying the Libertarians are going to win, because personally, I don't give a shit what party affiliation someone has who's in office. I don't care.
Right.
It turns out that right now, I like the Republicans more than the Democrats, but I don't want Ted Cruz to represent me, or Dan Crenshaw, or a litany of Republicans, or Lindsey Graham. Bless his heart. However, they are less bad, and that's always the game of politics. Who's the least bad? You're choosing the lesser of two evils. You're damn right. Exactly. I'm not going to choose the greater of two evils.
Right.
I've never understood people that say that as like, oh, that's just voting for the lesser of two evils. It's like, yeah, I wish everybody would, to be honest with you. But
I think we need to differentiate too between electoral victories and victories that are political in a more general sense, right? Because I agree with you that probably we're not going to have a libertarian candidate elected as president in 2024. I think it's extremely unlikely. But what you can do as a Libertarian Party serves rightly or wrongly, and I say this as someone who's not really part of the Libertarian Party, but identifies as a small L libertarian for the most part, the Libertarian Party serves as a messaging organization, in part because, you know, it's so condensed because there are so few outlets for libertarian messaging, right? So what the Libertarian Party does in terms of promoting candidates, in terms of its messaging, really has an impact on how what people affiliate with libertarianism, and how people understand the cause that is more broadly known as liberty-oriented. So this is where I see the Libertarian Party being able to serve a role that extends outside being a Ron Paul fan club, which is, I think, that I'm sure the Mises Caucus could do a great job making the Libertarian Party a Ron Paul fan club. Incidentally, Ron Paul ran as a Republican. And I know that Nate Thurston of Good Morning Liberties made that point, so thank you, Nate. But what I want from a party of the LP caliber in an ideal world would be to have it serve a messaging function, have it serve an intellectual function, have it serve this. And so, yeah, maybe we don't get the electoral victory, but we start doing messaging that plants the seeds of, okay, maybe this is messed up, maybe this is a better way to do it. And I do think you do it through discrete policy measures rather than going to the root and appealing to principles, because you are correct, most people don't really even have a sense of what is my political axiology, much less how does my policy preference reflect that.
Yeah, and not only that, who on this screen correlates to those that I'm voting for? Like, okay, I know, even if you know what yours are, do you take the time to even know what each candidate that's on that ballot actually, you know, stands for, wants to do, and do they believe it? And so, and I'm glad you brought up the messaging, because I'm coming off pretty critical of the Mises Caucus right now, even though I'm wearing a Mises shirt and they just had the biggest victory of their 5-year, lifespan. But it's because I still see political parties as a mechanism to win elections. Political parties only exist in my eye. I know that some people can argue, contrarian to that, that political parties only exist to get people elected to positions of power.
Yes.
And if you're
disagree, okay.
If you're incapable, if you're incapable of doing that, then maybe you shouldn't be a party. Maybe you should be a lobbyist group. Maybe you should be a caucus that's infiltrating the other parties, and because they're spineless. If you start a swell, they will topple over, and you can affect a lot more, a lot faster. There's an argument for that. And so, to me, because I've always heard, just drilled in my head, political parties only exist to get people elected into office. If that's not going to be a reality, then maybe it shouldn't exist. I love the Mises ideology. I love the Mises messaging.
Right.
But to boost it out to everybody, you can go the internet pathway, the Joe Rogans, the Tim Pools, and the Kennedys of the world.
Right.
Which is great. They have huge audiences, but you could still go to a random shopping center in Sheboygan and say, what do you know about libertarianism? And be like, oh, isn't that the party that had that naked dude dancing on stage, or like a guy with a boot on his head? Or, or Gary Johnson, the guy that didn't know diddly dick about Aleppo, or, what they perceive of the Libertarian Party, they believe it or not, the vastly more people in America don't watch Joe Rogan than do.
Yeah.
It's still you still have to get on the national TV waves to actually be known to the voting base.
You do.
Agreed.
You do.
But lastly, I'm curious, Amanda, do you disagree with my take on political parties and why they exist?
I'm an all of the above person. So I think that, the function of the political party is an organizational one. And it exists. One of the main things that political parties do is they organize to get candidates elected. But I also think that especially with a third party, right, or a minor party, a presidential campaign, or any campaign, let's just go with presidential, but a presidential campaign is a PR campaign for the cause. It's holy crap. But it's a PR campaign for libertarianism in that sense, libertarian presidential campaign. And I think is a useful function, because libertarianism isn't often magnified. When you can get someone on a debate stage that says, hey, I'm a libertarian, what's up? Here's what I believe. Here's the way that I present my beliefs. That does send a message. And you note very correctly that, it sends a message when you've got the naked people on stage, right? And that's how people associate libertarians. So the presidential campaigns are important. They do serve a function. There's nobody's naive enough, or few people are, to think that there's actually going to be a libertarian presidential or at many local levels victory. But I do think that that parties in general do serve a much more broader organizational structure, and particularly for minor parties, that has to do with public relations and messaging just as much as getting people in the halls of power. But I don't dispute your fifth column. Have a caucus go in and infiltrate another party. I'm all for that. So we can have everything.
I'm more of like a fight a war on many fronts.
Yeah.
Kind of a
Right.
guy. Like, fight to win, and do everything to win, from messaging to influencing to buying, to buy politicians. They are for sale. They're out there.
Yeah.
Go infiltrate lobbying groups. Play the game as it is played.
Yeah.
And just play it better.
Yeah.
Learn how to play it first. Right now, you got half the libertarian movement or liberty movement, libertarians, whatever, that think that the game shouldn't exist. Well, good luck convincing the people in the game that are benefiting from the game, that are making a lot of money from the game, willingly just giving it up and saying, you know what? Why didn't I think of that? I wish I didn't have all this money. No, you need to get in there and you need to infiltrate and just take over. Okay,
literally,
you've proven that you can take over the Libertarian Party. Now go take over one of the big ones.
Right.
That would be going back to the messaging thing. A lot of establishment libertarians, especially left-leaning ones, prags, all of that, are very unhappy. And a lot of people have left the Libertarian Party because of the Mises Caucus takeover, because they vehemently disagree with the messaging. And we are not the same.
Right.
I disagree with a lot of the messaging because it doesn't go far enough.
Yep.
Because it still includes a lot of leftist terminology and a lot of existing, like the shadows are still on the wall kind of stuff. Like we're still remembering those that were just here a moment ago. And in fact, we actually would really like to start extending olive branches. And I'm like, no, burn it down. Screw them. Keep going forward. Take this momentum and build momentum. Don't stop now. Don't stop now when you have the wind at your back.
Right.
So that's my criticism is I now kind of echoing what you said, Amanda, now that they are the soul bearers of the Libertarian Party, now I'm going to be critical. I wasn't critical on the way up because, hey, whatever it takes, get it done.
Right.
But now that you're there, if this is your glass ceiling and you're like, we're just going to hang out here. We're going to get used to this new office space and kind of relax. I'll be like, no, screw that. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm done. I will retract my $5 a month. Like it's time to blow this thing up the way it needs to.
Right. And as you should.
Yeah.
As you should. Like, I mean, that's the whole idea of growth and building. Like you don't just reach a certain pinnacle and just say, okay, hey, look, my mom made it, and you just stay there. Like, no, once you've achieved the goal, it's the idea of, okay, what's next? How do we tackle this? This next, you take a day or two to celebrate, hey, I made it or whatnot. But there are things that need to be done. You can't just say, like, the end goal was never to just take over the LP, the LP. Like if that was the end goal, then my God, we're thinking small. It's a thing where you have to make sure that you are preparing for the next step. And I'm the same way. I mean, Mises knows. Like, I mean, I got the shirts, like all of those things. But you want to make sure that as soon as you know and understand, like, okay, hey, now that you're in power, what are you going to do? answer those questions and move forward. And going back to your points as far as infiltrating, I 100% like, I am of the mindset of hey, I don't think any of this stuff should exist. I mean, I'm an ANCAP for God's sake, like, but I am not of the mindset of that I'm going to convince people of my political philosophy, like, at all. My wife doesn't even believe it. I mean, like, let's be real. I am the minority of minorities of minorities. Like, I mean, I really am. Be a black man saying that, like, go figure. So, you mentioned about how how we need to play the game like it's played. Like, Eric July says this all the time. Like, yeah, we hold our principles and we do all these things, but we got to stop being some sort of milk toast type libertarians, Republicans, or conservatives, of whatever we are, and start understanding that the game is rigged. And he uses the best analogy that I could ever think of. You're in a boxing match and you are over here trying to fight fair when your opponent has loaded gloves. They've bought off the judge, they've bought off the referee, and they've bought off all the fans. And you're sitting here trying to appeal to people saying, hey, this isn't a fair fight. It's just like, no, find your ways to infiltrate, figure out a way to do a low blow. Like, do a low blow. Like, that's fine. Okay, load your gloves, buy off a referee or 2 or 50, like, buy off some judges, get into the game and play the game like it's supposed to be played. Like, this is politics. We're playing. If we're going to be a part of the game, play the game. And this is why I enjoy both listening to all sides, because you'll hear the Dave Smiths, the Mises Caucus people, is the talk about, hey, we're taking over the LP, we're going to do things in a political way. And then you'll hear the other people who's saying, hey, like, develop your own autonomy, be based on yourself. Because in true honesty, everybody, both sides need each other to be successful. Like, you need the LP to make some sort of dent into liberty-minded people and the messaging to be clear, because regardless of where you live, they can come for you. Even if you're in the great state of Texas, they can come for you. Like, even if you were out there in Saipan, they can come for you. So let's not assume that we don't need this other side to help push forward this liberty movement. But then again, you need the messaging of the people who are autonomous and saying, hey, if you cannot afford $5 a month, you have no business being on this train. Like, learn how to afford things $5 a month. Learn how to be autonomous and to live by yourself and not be dependent on anybody else. Because the more people you have on both sides, I think it is better for liberty as a whole. And I hate using that term, but it is better for everybody, because it does push things forward. And then you do have the ability to buy off a few judges. And I mean that analogy wise, not literally.
Yeah, sure. No, I have it recorded now. So that's going.
I've already said like 4 times.
Yeah.
The official transcript has been written.
I will take your retraction later.
I'm not retracting anything.
Oh,
buy off
that's
some
going
judges. Buy off some judges. I don't care. Do it. But
Maurice, you might want to check and see if you can buy off Amanda to get her to change the record.
Well, she controls the Twitter, and I can definitely start making some crazy stuff and be like, Maurice, we got to calm down on all the posts now. I'm like, yes.
See, this buying off people is scalable. You got to start locally.
It is.
And so I do agree. Like I've already said, I agree with the get your life in order, clean your room, that kind of thing.
Right.
And start from the perspective of yourself and then work out. And so I actually am hopeful that the Libertarian Party in its current iteration will actually get some victories on local seats across the country.
They can.
Whether it's, county commissioner, sheriff, whatever.
Right.
I do think
if we can get some sheriffs, I'm all for it.
Oh, dude, if they do that, I might be looking to pick up, and I'll move for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden you're going to end up having like sheriff nullification. Like, I've heard of jury nullification, but you get sheriffs out there. They're like, yeah, I don't care what the law are in that big building. I'm not enforcing it. It's like,
right.
Now I'm
hit.
But it's, I don't know. It's too easy. This is why I know that deep down in my heart, regardless of what title I give myself, I probably am a libertarian because of my inherent contrarianism. It's like, if you would have told me 3 years ago, pre-COVID especially, that, in the next 4 years, the Mises Caucus would be the prevailing, dominating, membership of the LP, and Dave Smith is going to be running for president. They're going to push him to move run for president with Maj Touré as his VP, which there's other people I would like to see other than Maj. But if you would have just told me that Mises Caucus will own the entire party and Dave Smith's running for president, I would have been just as giddy as everybody was at Reno.
Right.
But now that they have it, it's like, yeah, I can't be happy.
Right.
I can't look at that and just say, woohoo. I have to look at it and go, how can this fail?
Right.
And it's not because I hate myself or just can't stay on one track and like pull for something more than a couple of years. It's because I think there's a damaging aspect to blindly supporting anything and hero worship.
For
and
sure.
As the party gets bigger and as the message hits more ears and more people come in, there's an inherent human characteristic where you want to make things bigger than they actually are. Dave Smith is a god. Tom Woods is untouchable. There's no criticism you can give to Michael Malice. Maj Touré is untouchable because he's so tied in with Black Guns Matter, and we don't want to say anything negative about that, for the love of God, because then and it's like, no, everybody's open to get it at any and all points, because if I can't give it to you, then what are you going to do when you go out into the wild and you run into people that only associate you with the last time they saw a naked guy dancing on stage?
Exactly.
Well, exactly. And you're right. It is a tendency that people have to try and scale things beyond their scalability, including people, and it's very anti-individualist. It's not, people are individuals. Individuals are fallible. Individuals are awesome, and individuals can proceed from the same principle and get to very different conclusions. And this is something that I think you're alluding to this a little bit, that there are certain times that I see certain facets of the Mises affiliates not be okay with that you can proceed from the same principles and get different conclusions, even though you have the same sort of basis and value system. And one thing that I love about talking with libertarians is I can argue with a libertarian about anything and we'll still be friends. And I can hear two libertarians arguing about anything viciously, and I mean, very, very emphatically, and they're still friends. And then you go up and drink on the roof, and it's great. And the times that I have gotten the most ideological whiplash is when I'm hearing libertarians debating an issue, because they're so principled and they're saying, yes, I agree with X and therefore Y. And the other person says, I agree with X, therefore let me show you how Z. And I want that to be an appeal for people, because that is missing in the two major parties. What I worry about is that we are not getting that in some of the Mises messaging. Am I being unfair?
No. But like I said, I want them to go further. So I don't necessarily... Here's my inherent issue that is going to exist no matter who's in power in the LP anyway, is that their bumper sticker tagline forever was, "We're neither left nor right." And so we're here to capture all the centrists,
right?
All the people that don't like the Democrat Party or the Republicans. We're here to we're a catch-all for the moderates. Is eventually what that ends up becoming. And moderates never push the needle.
Nope.
It's also not true.
Well, no, they move the needle, but they're not going to push policy.
No, I'm sorry. I was saying that we're neither left nor right. We're moderate is untrue, as though there's a spectrum. There's like a line. So I was saying that's what's untrue.
Well, and that's the thing is nobody ever thinks, except for the people that have actually done introspection and are like, no, I am this, and I'm okay with that. I don't need to be the guy in the middle that can play on both sides. Some sides are just wrong. If you actually have an ideology, you can't have an ideology where you agree with everybody, where
Yeah.
everybody's making good points.
Yeah.
And well, I think the left gets it right here, but the right gets it wrong here. It's like, I don't know what time and era that was true, but I don't think it's the one we live in now.
Right.
And especially COVID and post-COVID,
Yeah.
I have for sure moved further to the right because I know that anything on the left wants to control me.
Yep.
That's if there's, you know, how they a lot of people are single issue voters, like abortion's my thing, war's my thing, the economy is my thing, controlling me is my thing.
Yeah.
And the party that seems to want to do that the most and the strictest and the least favorable to me are all on the left. They're lefties. They're neo-libs. They're actually neocons that are now, you know, anyway. And that's also why I don't like the Ted Cruz's, Dan Crenshaw's, and Lindsey Graham's, because they're no different. That's where party affiliation actually doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's your ideology I hate.
Yeah.
And that's why I say libertarians should run as Republicans or Democrats. I don't care, because you will naturally get votes by people that don't care what you believe.
Exactly.
But I've moved further to the right just based on lived experiences. Therefore, I don't have the patience to have those gentle debates with people on the left as much as I think I used to, because I see that everything is dividing further and further and further, and that people that were on the left before are further on the left now, and the people that were right-leaning or on the right before are further right now. And to bridge that gap, I think that thing's over. I think that's completely over. I think it's going to have to take deleting inflation, getting rid of every idea of any mandate ever, letting everybody choose however they want to live is the only way you're going to bring people back together. As long as the conversation is, should we allow them to do this?
Break it up.
Right,
Maurice wants it gone. Maurice wants
Break
to
it up.
burn it down.
I'm with you, Maurice. But
break it up,
because that's not a reality, and we have to live in the world that, like I said, we got to play the game that is being played. We got to live in the world that's right here. So I can want that, but before we can ever live in that, we have to address it for what it is. And I know that there are people that want to do things to me that I can't just agree with them, or at some point I have to go, I can't live with you.
right?
You aren't ever, I have no desire to be your ally. We're never going to see eye to eye on this stuff. You need to go your way and I need to go my way. And if that exists in America and the Libertarian Party is neither right nor left, then you're talking to nobody.
Yeah.
I think you're still arguing that from a binary, though, aren't you? Because you're saying that you've moved further to the right. So does that mean that you're less libertarian? Because I don't see it as you have a spectrum. I see that you've got multidimensionality, and so in right versus left, perhaps you've edged further to the right. But does that then make you less libertarian, or are you conceding that there is just right and left? Or
no, it makes me less libertarian.
Okay.
Because like 4 years ago, if the issue of drag queen story hour or whatever came up, I'd say I don't care. Just as long as you're not forcing that on me, and I don't have to live next to it, or just as long as you're not bringing it to me, I don't care. But the more that I've looked at other aspects of what people want to do with children, from the school curriculum, masking them, forced vaccines, all this other stuff that I disagree with, it's like, I don't care. It can't affect me because I don't have kids, is the way that I would used to think of it. I don't care about any of that. It's not, it was the most selfish opinion, because just as long as it didn't affect me, I don't have an opinion on it. And I could turn a blind eye as everything else and everybody else around me sunk and, ruined their lives or whatever. It's like, don't care. My life's great. Eventually, you stop doing that when you see that it's like, yeah, but these are the same people that want to also keep me in my house, vax me up, take away my guns. And this just happens to be another thing that they're doing. They're
Right.
stacking up all the things that it's like, if I don't have an opinion on this or speak out against it, how many of these it doesn't affect me until it does affect me?
Right.
And by that point, is there even going to be any ground to stand on?
Right.
And so I look at it very differently than I did 4 years ago. 4 years ago, if you asked me about drag story time, whatever, I'd say I don't care. Nowadays, I'm like, please should go in there with force and shut it down. Very different. Very different.
Now you're making the conflation, right? Because I have a couple points that I want to ask about. So the first would be, yes, the left likes Drag Queen Story Hour, which would be like a private library having a drag queen come in and read. Well, I guess it's public library, but
but say it's not private, it's public.
No. So that is a difference, right? And that's
right.
fair. But if you had like a bookstore, right? You had a private bookstore that has a drag queen come in and read books. That is something that is a private business doing something, and that's quite different to having a bunch of school kids being forced to be vaccinated. And yes, it's true that the left has made both of those a couple of their pet issues, but I don't think that those two are inherently linked. And so I can say, yeah, I drag queen story hour, sure, whatever. And also definitely don't have this weird, I mean, I don't approve of mandates, generally speaking. And certainly not when it comes to kids, and then something that hasn't even been out for more than a year. So those are two different things. And so I'm curious about the conflation with that, just because those are two issues that the left has, that the left has claimed. So is this just kind of a reaction against what the left does?
Yeah, sure. I guess you can call me a reactionary, neo-reactionary. Terms I no longer care about. It's more like...
I was just asking. I was asking if this is a reaction.
Oh, so if a private book club or whatever wanted to do this, that's a different thing. So whatever. And I'm like, no. It's not, because I look at things more about culture than I do on private business ownership and doing whatever I want, and just as long as that's not hurting anybody. It's like, yeah, but I understand that if I were to have a private business doing something that was amplified to the moon anti-left, I would have 150 leftists throwing bricks through my window, protesting, getting me canceled, shutting down my bank account, and doing things I would never do to them, by giving them the grace of saying, well, just as long as you're doing it privately with your own, that stuff in my eyes is over. And in the country, I see it slowly shifting. I'm just looking at how everything is. It's not, I don't want them to be that way. I want everybody to leave each other alone and not try to ruin each other, or, I'm going to ruin your access to money. And so, well, I think you're ruining children. I think you're ruining society. I think you're, a Christian fundamentalist that want to take us back to the Stone Age. Like, I want everybody to just stop giving a F about what everybody else is doing. And that also means the left needs to stop pushing their will on everybody else. Like, now we have this is June. We're in Gay Pride Month. I don't know why we have to celebrate what people do with their genitals. The fight's over.
You were the one who talked about sex at dawn, sir.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, isn't that like Richard Dawkins or something like that? That's an actual book. I was just making a book.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're claiming it's an actual book. Okay, I'll put that down.
Google it.
I'll let Maurice jump in, because I know I've been usurping this conversation. But
no, you're fine.
I had a follow-up. So you said that Maurice is just like, I'm leaving.
He's like, I'm out.
Whatever.
I can't keep up with this.
Amanda Magoo hour. I love you, Maurice.
No, you're good.
But so you said that you care about culture, and you are, you care about culture more than the institutions of the state and so forth. And yeah, you also made a comment, maybe you were being a little bit facetious, but you said, drag queen story hour, cops got to come in and shut it all down. So that would be using the state as a means of cultural enforcement, correct?
Yes.
And so that would make you, and you've conceded that you are now less libertarian. And that's part of that transition.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I haven't seen any right wing drag queen story hour. I'm sure it probably exists. Charlie Kirk definitely wants to do his yes, but they used the state to be able to have that. So the state is supporting it. So I don't see any difference using the state to not have it exist. Like if a city or a town in Montana, like if somebody wanted to rent out the local pub and do that, and the local sheriff said, no, we're not doing that here. I'm going to shut it down. That's no different than what's currently happening that we're supposed to agree with blindly, where the state police have to sit outside and keep people from shutting it. Nope. It's their right. But if 99% of the town doesn't want that in their town, who has the say of what happens in that town? And so it's the state is the only thing keeping that alive, much like what we disagree with businesses. It's like, well, a lot of businesses have the perceived monopoly on industry only because the state is keeping other people from giving them competition. If I don't want you in my town and I don't have the right to voice that in a way that reaches, that end, then if I don't have the ability to have any say so of what happens in my community, then my community's been taken over.
Right.
And that's how people see it, because the left has already understood this for a long time. If you don't let me have drag queen story time, I will pick it outside the courthouse. I will threaten judges. I will start running for office and start buying off politicians. And we're going to go get that. We're going to go get that to push our culture.
Right.
This is why I'm saying understand the world for what it is and play the game as it is currently being played. Otherwise, you will just be run over by it.
Yeah.
So would part of your going further with Mises, you said you wanted it to go further, would part of your going further with Mises then be making it a little bit more Republican? More like the GOP?
I think that they would be fine if they just stuck in the pocket of Ron Paul, who was a right-leaning, I guess nowadays he would look like a far-right, extremist. And see, that's another thing. If I just hold the same position long enough, I will become an extremist because the culture will move so far in one direction when it's like, I just was standing here. And so I would say, no, stay in the pocket of the Ron Paul message and you'll be fine, which I'm self-admitting that, yeah, that's right wing. If Ron Paul would have never been like, I think if a virus comes around, we should probably shut everything down for a good 2 years. And if people want to protest and burn down apartment buildings in Minneapolis, we should not only not stop it, but I really hope that spreads. Like, no, he would say, yeah, that needs to be shut down by any means necessary because people are getting hurt, even if that requires the state doing it. I would prefer it didn't, but that's the mechanism that we'll have to utilize to get this to stop. And just saying that, I can hear myself going, man, CNN would have a field day ripping me a new one. But it's what we used to believe as a society, that exposing children to these things and forcing unknown medication and everything that we've gone through in the last 2 to 5, 6 years is just, it's not normal. And just even trying to strive for some formal normalcy seems extreme. And that's a scary spot to be in, I think. So I have no desire to save myself and just go with the flow because I don't like where the flow is going anyway.
Right.
So yeah, as far as the Mises, we've mentioned it a couple times. I want the Mises messaging to go further because currently, for example, one thing that was accomplished in Reno was they struck down some former planks of the Libertarian Party, and they replaced some. They just deleted some. For example, there was one that was dubbed the woke plank.
The racism one, the bigotry one?
Yeah. So it's a long paragraph, but there was just one particular line in it that had been voted in back in the, I think, early to mid 70s. The party was established in 71, I believe. And I think in 1974, they added this line about we condemn bigotry as irrational and repugnant. And they kept it in from, I think, 74 to like 1980. And then they got rid of it because they didn't think it was needed anymore. Like the point was made. Like bigotry was an issue coming out of the civil rights, era. And going into the 80s, they didn't feel that it was really necessary to be sitting there because they felt that the culture around them, that wasn't really a as serious of an issue, as a prevalent of an issue as it was coming out of the 60s. So they got rid of it. And then they brought it back in, I believe in 2008. And I could be off on these dates. I don't have anything written down. I'm just going off of memory. But they didn't bring it in until around 2008. So it's been out of the party for, I think, longer than it's been in the party. And the current regime, the Mises regime, wanted to strike it from the record, and which makes the left-leaning people lose their shit. Like, well, if you're getting rid of it, then that must mean that
you're pro-racist,
pro-bigotry,
right?
And it's like, this is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of mindset and thought pattern that needs to. You're not serious about anything. Like you're trying to stave off the next offense.
Right.
Oh, when's the next time I'm going to be offended? Because I think deep down everybody knows that words are now violence. I've been told that. Obviously I'm just joking, but your opposition sure would like you to think and believe that words are violence, and therefore they will counteract that by calling anybody they disagree with a bigot, a racist, and a whatever phobe.
Yep.
Which still has weight to it and power behind it. And so it's like, yeah, we're not going to use that language. We're going to stop using terminology that is only thrown back at us. We're not going to uphold your words because they've now been weaponized against. Why would I do that? So all they did, and so Spike Cohen, who ran as the vice president candidate in 2020 behind Joe Jorgensen, is the one that rewrote this line. So they recommended that we condemn bigotry as irrational and repugnant to be replaced with we uphold and defend the rights of every person, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or any other aspect of their identity. Which is like too many words. Yeah.
The other planks have a lot more words. The anti-war plank goes on for like a dissertation. I mean, if you're gonna talk about what has too many words,
and I hate that. But I hate that because you're still leaning into all of these different identity groups. We're going to respect those, and we see them to be real, like there's value in them. When we don't, libertarians do not put any value on race, ethnicity, or any other aspect of identity. So why even have it in there? This is what I would have said it should have been. We uphold and defend the rights of every person. That's it. Because that includes every race, ethnicity, sex, gender. That's everybody. You can save a lot of commas.
Yeah.
Sure. And I do agree with you that for a libertarian, that view is that regardless of, et cetera, is redundant. But you yourself just spoke about having to work with the current political climate, right? And work with what is. Mm-hmm. Currently in the political climate, there's a lot of people are throwing around various identity terms. And so is that language not kind of a way to just say, hey, we acknowledge that this is part of the discourse. We uphold equal rights regardless of any of this stuff. So that's going to be our statement. Goodbye. Is that not just a way of working with what is and still retaining one's principles?
I think the best way to make an argument where you even stand out is to make it known that you're not even going to use those terms. Yes. That would be different. And so I graduated from the Morgan Freeman School on Racism. And that is, if you want to end it, just stop talking about it.
Right.
Stop addressing it the way that it's being discussed. Because you talking about it isn't going to change the fact that, because he also understands that true racism isn't going to be a discussion. It's not going to be something that someone's talked out of. It's how they're raised. That's an entire life cycle. And it's a very small number of people. It's actually a pretty phenomenal thing that actual Nazis are like less than 200 people, and white supremacists, at least before the last 5 years, were so insignificant, but they've gotten all this airtime because we just
Yeah.
can't shut up about them. Do you think you're making more or less of those people by doing that? And so, with that being my mindset, just go back to what your principles actually are. And that is stop breaking down people by the. I don't care if that's the national conversation. You will pierce through everybody being used to hearing this language by stop using it and make it known that you're not going to use it. And now you
Yeah.
push that message, and now you're doing something different. This is nothing different. This is just saying I'm going to take away the one word bigotry because that's what can be used against us, but I'm still going to uphold all these other pillars of identitarianism.
Maurice, I'm
I
gonna
think
let you have the floor because it's been like a year since you've
No,
been
no,
able
no,
to
no.
speak.
You're good. I'm enjoying it because I was I would say I lost my way when Jim started talking about secession. So that's what I was excited for. I was like, yeah, y'all, you go your way and I'll go mine, and we can make all that happen. So by all means, and I can see where that that comes in, because it's where where if we did what Magoo is talking about, what Jim is talking about, is stating, hey, regardless of your person or whatever the case may be, then that negates any what about what about this person? Well, are they a person? Well, yes. Okay, so they fall under that. And so because what I see a lot of times is being in libertarian spaces and being a libertarian, you fight against everybody calling you anything and everything under the sun. You're transphobic because you don't have this in your bio. You're this, that, and third or whatnot. And if you just make a blanket statement of every single person, that's it. You're like, well, what about this? Do they fall into that category?
Are they a person?
Well, yes.
Yes.
Then okay. Then like it's that simple. And then you're not kowtowing to what we don't want to kowtow to in the first place. As far as what Jim was talking about, the drag queen hours and things of that nature and whatnot. And so I where I would push a little back would be just the hey, I want the state to come in and do my bidding for me as well too. Like, hey, the sheriff's going to shut this place down. So like I'll say this, like if it is a public library, by all means, like, yeah, the sheriff can come in and shut that stuff down. Why? Because that's public. Like everybody needs to agree on it or nobody gets to use it. Like that's how I'm going to, if everybody's putting money into it and you're going to call this what it is and you're going to say it's a democracy and this, that, and third or whatnot, then by all means, I should have a say as to if drag queens are showing up there or not. And if we can't agree, then the only thing that you do at a library is get books. That is it.
Would you apply that to the books in the library too? If not everyone agrees that
no, because books are you making a conscious effort to go in and check something out and leave. Like
okay.
you are not pushing that onto anybody else.
Okay.
There is no like a hey, yeah, it's not being forced on. You can go into a public library and check out whatever book because that's discourse. Like I'm not going to negate discourse or whatnot, but if you are not going to use my funds to subject children to male parts, like that's for where I'm from, that's sexual abuse, that's sexual assault, and you need to go to jail for that.
And that is why I said that the state should come in. If they're going to utilize the state to allow that to happen, then it's literally no different if the state shuts that down. You're still only existing because of the state, or my beliefs are only being upheld because of the state. Either way, you're using the state, I'm going to use the state. Let's use the state. But I also say that because of messaging, because I know that sounds extreme, and that's going to get people going, hey, wait a minute, but that isn't this. What it will do, hopefully, will either start a conversation or let somebody know that I'm never going to be on your side, so just move away from me. But the people that I want to speak with are the ones that won't do that, and that will be like, wait a minute, what are you talking about there? You're talking about using the state? Yes, because children are involved. Children, there's a reason why if you go to prison for harming a children, the other prisoners, no matter how vile they are, will F you up and likely kill you. Because even criminals know that there's a line. And the fact that here in polite society, we're not supposed to act like that line exists. Like, are the criminals now better than us? And plus, it allows us to have the conversation that if there were no kids in there, I don't care. I don't care. If a bunch of grown men want to dance around like women for other grown men that are into that, just as long as it doesn't become the prevailing thing that sweeps the nation, and you have your little corner to do it, and you literally you change clothes before you come walking out to, go to Waffle House. If I don't know about it, then I can't be against it. But if you flaunt it in my face and force me to accept it, I'm going to fight against you because I'm not coming up, putting up, pictures of me acting in a sexual manner and saying, support this bigot.
Well,
that would sound absurd.
I didn't bring up the texts. You just did. So
every now and then I out myself. I can't help it. One of these days I'll get good at this. But no, it was more of just to add to the conversation, knowing that would likely come off a little harsh.
For sure.
Because I know both of you guys and I like both of y'all.
Yeah.
And so if it led to well, I don't know about that. Well, now we're having a conversation.
Right.
But it's also, there's a little bit of truth behind it. And that is, see the world for what it is. Understand politics for what they are. Play in the field that you are in, not the one that you build it and they will come fantasy land.
Exactly.
Live in the world as it exists. Don't sit there and demand the world come to you as you want it to be. And that's the easiest way that I can probably put it.
I can agree with that.
Unless you're writing a plank about
I mean, I'll have a problem.
What is the limiting principle conversation would probably take another three episodes. But that's why this is so much fun. That's why we love to have you on. So
definitely.
You guys let me go. Y'all just let me rant and rant and rant. And good Lord, I
love it.
I can do that with the best of them. Hopefully,
I love it.
Hopefully it tracked and made sense. I have a tendency of starting down a pathway and then seeing like a squirrel and like 4 more alleyways, and then next thing I know, I'm on like a different city block and don't even know how to get back.
Like the cops should come in, drag queen story hour at 08. I was trying to like provoke you, and no, but it's
next thing I know, I got makeup on and I've lost myself.
No, but there are contradictions that I perceive, and I also enjoy discussing them with you because we have had these, and the listeners to the podcast aren't privy to the amazing discussions that we have after hours on the Good Morning Liberty group chat, where we just go and go and go. And at one point we solved Israel and Palestine. That was fantastic. But so, yeah, I
forgot how to do that, but I know that we did.
I forgot to. It's fine. I mean, there'll be another moment to do that, I'm sure. So, yeah.
So, Jim, where can our listeners find you, follow you, all that lovely stuff? Any shameless plugs? Not shameless at all. All the plugs you want to give to our millions of listeners, please go ahead and do them right now.
Well, if they're so inclined to hear how I can actually be the reasonable one in another group of 3 people, they can go check out Ignore the Rant podcast, where it's me and my 2 buddies that are not politically affiliated by any means. They definitely don't share my political beliefs, but because I know that I'm in friendly territory here, I know that I can say some things that I don't know if I would say even on my own podcast, because I don't think my co-host would even understand what the hell I'm talking about. But we discuss current events and news stories, sometimes the big ones, sometimes we'll find out really niche ones, and just have as much goofy adolescent level humor, fun. I mean, it is not safe for work. It is not for kids. We say all the words. And we go pretty hard, but we have fun with it. So if you're into, I don't know, guy talk, dirty humor, just cutting up with the boys, then come check us out. Ignore the Rant. You can follow me on Twitter at Magoo _ITR. And that's about all the places I want people to know I exist.
Not your OnlyFans. You're not giving that out on the public podcast.
No, not ready for that. I would have to change my entire plank if I.
Well, yeah, exactly. You have to put the drag queen story hour back in for that.
Yeah, that'll come out later when I have to. Then my contrarianness has to start defending them.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I'm keeping that in my back pocket for a few more years.
Awesome. Exactly. Well, thank you again for coming onto the show. We greatly appreciate you. It is always a great conversation. Again, if you want to find anywhere Jim is located, again, at Magoo_ITR for Ignore the Rant. And you can find his podcast, I'm assuming, anywhere podcasts are available. You can do all of that. Go check his stuff out. Do all of that, and we'll be back with another episode of Civil Discord, your weekly dose of radical curiosity. Until then, y'all be easy.
Stay fierce.